Okay, we're gonna turn the recording on. The, in general, I'm looking for someone to kind of take over the whole thing, if you're interested in that. So, the only real requirements are that we need to record, and stream at the same time, and the recordings eventually may get up to YouTube. Whether we stream directly to YouTube and so people can watch it is a different thing. We might also, do something with one of the better streaming things as well. I don't know, part of the video things. Not descriptive, but what's the other? I can't remember the name of it. So. But most people use YouTube.
Are you talking about Twitch?
Not Twitch, no. There's a activity pub version of YouTube.
YouTube, I think, might be one of them.
YouTube, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which some.
Huh? They're fine. I did bump the table with my foot.
No, we need to put up like some caution tape over here.
Sit cable.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. You are at NoVaLUG. If you intended to go to the dentist's office downstairs, you're in the wrong place, because this will be a much more interesting experience than the dentist's office.
Absolutely. I are.
If you haven't signed in, please come up here and do so. This is it's not for tracking purposes. It's for this is the secure facility, lady who's coming and going. And there's the Wi-Fi. Not a lot of people that do it. All right, so, this is wrong. We don't have chaser tickets anymore. It's validation, correct?
Yeah, there's a kiosk at the front desk.
Yeah.
Take the card you got for the slip you got from the garage, scan it, and it'll validate you to get out of the garage again.
All right.
So we'll walk you through that if you need to.
Yes. So I need to change these slides. Many thanks to Ridgeline for giving us the space today. And to that, we are streaming and we are recording. So find your P's and Q's. As always, the meeting notes are in Headshot. So any information that is presented here, at least in these agenda slides, we have in Headshot along with the links to the presentations and so forth. So I assume most of you have seen these already. If you haven't, we have websites. There is a Mastodon thing, which I normally post the meeting announcements to, also the mailing list, in Discord and LinkedIn. All right, let's do an icebreaker. All right. Because we're all excited to be here. Who invented Git and why?
That was horrible.
Why did he do it? Okay,
He was frustrated with the current available source control methods and wanted something similar.
Also, they had proprietary, they were doing it for free for a while. Kind of the same thing.
BitKeeper.
Keeper, thank you.
They had a license for BitKeeper. BitKeeper let them use it for the Linux kernel.
See, it always flip-flops. I've heard one talk where he talks about how he was not, like, he was frustrated with SVC and case and the other available options.
Well, when BitKeeper became no longer an option, going back to one of those was the, no, this sucks. So
the actual, what happened was a lot of the Linux kernel developers were not happy with it, with BitKeeper. And Andrew, what's his name? The guy who did Samba, he actually, he reverse engineered BitKeeper and they got really pissed off with him. And then threw the Linux kernel out. And that's when Torvalds kind of just put all his thoughts together and created Git. All right. Speaking of this, what did Linus Torvalds say about 386 BSD and GNU Herd? Actually not true. Yeah. Anyone ever heard this?
No.
He said this. He said if he knew they existed.
Oh, that's true.
He never would have done a Linux kernel.
He would have reinvented that.
Would have reinvented it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I do remember that.
All right. Which computer popularized the 8-bit byte?
APM.
I'll have to know
That's
that.
how us.
You wanna know this? Really? Who knows this?
Trash eighty.
The IBM System 360.
No.
Mainframe that did that. Yeah. And the history there is that the word sizes were all over the place before the System 360 came along.
When was that released?
1964.
Reset.
So before that, characters were usually 6 bits. So yeah, so we complained about Unicode or 8 bits not being good enough for like internationalization, but it was really bad before that. So, all right. So Sophie Wilson and Steve Ferber, what were they looking to do? Which processor were they looking to replace when they were inspired to create the ARM processor? Anyone know this?
Is this the Mars processor?
Nope.
Who's Mars?
Wasn't another RISC processor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they were handed paper, by the way. RISC came about, when the origins of RISC came about because of that computer, the System 360. There was a guy at IBM who did an analysis, and he did some analysis, and he said like half of the instructions, if you wrote a program, because back then they wrote a lot of things in assembly, you took out a lot of the, like half of the instruction on the 360, it actually ran much faster. So, that was where that idea, where one of the original ideas of RISC came from. But these two were looking to replace, they had already done one computer. They were looking to replace the CPU or find a replacement for the CPU in their next computer when they were inspired to do this. Come on.
Isn't that, what's that third architecture? It's like starts with an I, it's like I36.
You think that titanium?
But that came much later.
I
I see it packaged every once in a while. I forget the term.
You're talking about I-386.
I386.
That's just,
That's Intel.
That's right, you know, so,
that's x86.
since we haven't mentioned it, the 800 series, 8000 series.
You're close. You're close to 6800. The 6502.
6502.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of my electronic stuff is just.
Yeah. So they did the Acorn BBC micro or whatever what that was. And that was a 6502, the Mustang 6502. And they were looking to like the next generation. And they actually went out and visited the guys who were doing the next version of 6502 and realized that they were like that research team was actually working out of like a shack, essentially, somewhere in Minnesota or whatever. And they kind of went, well, this doesn't require millions of dollars to do. We could do this. So that's what they started. So pretty interesting. All right. What does the nice command do?
Oh, it's the processor.
What'd you say, Ed?
Lowers priority.
Okay. Okay, you guys got one finally.
Just being nice.
Hey, we had.
I'm not nice. All right, anybody have any jobs? Know of any jobs? Yes,
I'll be hiring a bunch of network security people soon, so if anybody wants to get into network security, automation or Linux.
so if anyone
Any
has
skills.
security, talk to him after the meeting. If you can you put a link to whatever that, do you have the job posted now or?
Not yet, no.
All
They'll
right.
be coming up in the next few weeks.
All right, when you get that, can you send it either to the list or to me or
Sure,
whatever, and I'll let people know.
There might be someone trying to sign in through
If
Zoom.
you haven't hired.
You can hear me.
Tech news. I will admit, I've been very busy this month. So I didn't really follow much, any tech news whatsoever, other than something's going on with Richard Stallman again. So I'm kind of curious what people think about that. If they even have an understanding of what's going on, because I fully don't understand what's going on. So,
I don't know what the latest is going to be.
all right.
I mean, is it good or bad? Because usually
It's been a
when light pops up, it's bad.
My understanding is there are people trying to get it removed again from the Free Software Foundation, again.
So water's wet.
What, yeah, water's, yeah, right, exactly. I don't know what to tell you, I just know that there are some people who were anonymously talking about him and they're bringing up stuff that we've known for years. I don't know. I've actually met Richard Stallman, met him twice, he's a pretty big jerk in person. That said, you know, he's,
Yeah, that poster job.
yeah, I mean, he basically is the one who started free software, so he's been adamant about it. So you have to give him props for that. All right. Area events. The Maker Faire, I believe, is tomorrow. Anyone going to that?
But you're right.
Yeah, I might try to go to that as well. I actually went to NoVaLUG last month. I took a tour of their thing, of their facility. It's pretty impressive. There's a monthly fee for that. I think it starts at $75 a month, but I mean, they have everything under the sun in there. Except for they didn't really, I mean, they have some stuff to do electronics, but they don't really have an area for it. They have blacksmithing, woodworking,
Yeah.
CNC machines. I mean, if it's physical to do, they have it. So it's very impressive. So it'd be interesting to see what they have in the Maker Faire. See what's going on with it. So, all right. Yes, and this is Andy's plea call for presentations. I didn't make a joke about Darren this month, but what we are looking for is anything from 15 minutes to an hour and a half. So we don't have to fill the time with a presentation. We can always fill the time with other things. So don't worry about the length. Yeah, it doesn't have to be an advanced topic. I know we've had some on AI. We're gonna have some on AI, some more. But it does not have to be an advanced topic at all, because there are plenty of people who are at the other skill levels, right? And to be honest, there are things I've learned that A, I've forgotten, and B, things I never learned. So, and I think that's true of all of us. So I wouldn't worry about the skill level at all. You can be anywhere from beginner to advanced or in between. Generally, we want it to be Linux or open source or something related to that. So if it's coming in and like, I have this proprietary hardware that only works on Windows, probably not something we're gonna be happy about. But other than that, we're pretty open-minded. And yeah, so the polish of any shine of your choice. That means you can have a presentation. If you have a marketing department that puts together presentations for you, more power to you. If you want to come in and open up a terminal and just do command line stuff to show us something, also completely fine. So, so if you have anything, just see me after the meeting, and I'll try to get you on the calendar. Well, we do have next month. We do have one on AI. We have a company called Cobinian. They use their software development shop, local, and they do a lot of AI to help them boost their productivity. So they're going to come in and talk to us about how they do it and the pitfalls and so forth. For December, I didn't want to schedule anything. I've been thinking about doing this for a long time. And I know we do a lot of presentations and so forth, but I'm always going to do that. So for September, I want you to all think about this. We want to do an install fest. So if you have some hardware, and I have some somewhere, I'm going to bring in. You can let people install on it. I have an old Lenovo laptop. If someone wants to try to get some sort of weird distribution on there, Lenovo laptops are pretty resilient. I may order a RISC-V development board also to play with for that. But also a swap meet. So if you have any hardware you want to swap with someone, I have two very clicky keyboards that I wouldn't mind trading for something else that looks cool. And then the other thing is, I want to do a geek t-shirt contest. So some of us seem to wear geek t-shirts on a regular basis. So we will have some prizes for a geek t-shirt contest. So there you go. So think about that for December. I'll try to put more on bigger heads up on the mailing list about that as well. January. So does everyone remember the one of the guys that was in here for the AI talk, the AI security talk we had? One of the guys that was sitting here asking, or basically chiming in with a lot of stuff, he was asking a lot of questions, but he's also giving us a lot of, like, you need to look at this, you need to look at that. He was a principal scientist for Amazon, specializing in artificial intelligence. He's going to be here, and so we basically said, hey, you come in and talk about anything you want AI related. That's what we're going to do. February, if you have something, I would more than be happy to put you on this list. So All right, so now I'm gonna turn it over to John. John, who is one of our regulars here, is going to talk here. Talk to us about Wildcard Certs and Let's Encrypt.
Good morning. As Andy alluded to, this will be that polish. Basically, the right edge. So yes, wildcard certs. So I have a small lab at home, like most people here, as Andy mentioned. Sometimes you discover a new tool by hanging out places like this, you know, like you want to play with and things like that. But I have a small lab at home that I use. The thing is that how browsers are getting more and more persnickety about connecting to illegal certs and all this other stuff, you know, through loops or say this is unsafe to a blank screen on a browser, all that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, it kind of sucks. So anyhow, this is the infrastructure that I have, and most of the pain is taken away, at least that I can at least install the tool and fight with whatever I need to fight with the tool, but at least getting to the tool with 90% of the time with the browser, at least that's kind of, you get that for free. Basically, with the way this thing's set up, I can, you know, install either a container or a full VM, get the thing running on some oddball port, put a line that Nginx config, and everything else should work. Assuming the tool is bigger. Now, how I do some of this is the DNS infrastructure I set up. I have a public domain, and then all my boxes inside the domain is, you know, home.mydomain.com. And then I also have a wildcard DNS entry, probably a better name for it, but that's what I call it. Which basically, if you put in blah at app.example.com, it'll return internally it returns the IP address of the two Nginx servers have a people IP, virtual IP address that flips back and forth, but that's what it points to. Externally, it points to the external interface of my home router, which turn forwards to that same box. So that way, if I use my laptop at the house and I'm on the local Wi-Fi, I hit the same URL. If I'm out somewhere else, I hit the same URL and come back. So, yeah, internal boxes are all in that same domain, so that helps with other things. Yeah, with the SSH, for instance, like a lot of times I'm out somewhere else, and if I call the box by its name, fully qualified domain, this little hook here will automatically connect to the host, and then using the -J switch, if you do it like manually on SSH, will actually land you on the box you care about. So it's kind of handy for a quick hook if you need to connect when you're external or at a LUG meeting or whatever. As I mentioned before, while the wildcard certs is basically, I can, you know, the browsers are getting more and more persnickety about connecting to things that we probably shouldn't, but in a lab, you don't really care. So it used to be like, yeah, keep going, click. And now it's getting more and more harder. And also you can't cheat. My old cheat used to be 10-year cert sitting somewhere in a corner somewhere, and it worked for that. Now browsers started getting smart about that, more at the OS level. I think Mac was the first one to do it. I think all of them have adapted it. I'm not sure if that number is still accurate as far as 398 days, but I know it's gotten shorter and shorter, and they keep threatening to get down to the Let's Encrypt number of 90-day kind of thing. We all heard of Let's Encrypt, free domain validation, meaning you're proving that you own the domain. That's it. You're not proving that you're even a good guy or bad guy or anything like that. All this is doing is proving that at least the guy that owns example.com owns this domain, and he or she is not routing you out somewhere else. Cool thing about this stuff, it's all open source. You can build your own. You can build your own if you want to. Acme itself is an open protocol, and they started supporting wildcard certs in January. A couple years afterwards, which made my life a lot easier because again, I can just take the file itself, I generate it once, and I just spew it throughout the network. I don't have to do a challenge request for every site because I have a few of them because I'll tinker a lot. Acme protocol is kind of cool. I don't know if anybody's ever dug into this or not, but we all probably done it once or twice. But here's the steps in it. But that validation step inside the dotted lines is what personally I like to do as few times as possible. So that's why again I'm using a wildcard cert at the domain level and just parking all my things behind that app domain, for instance.
Acme protocol is just a HTTP kind of puts a token in a wallet.
Yep. Yeah, the Acme protocol, which I think I get into that here. Basically it'll you submit your, most of the tools, like we're going to be using Certbot here, but most of the tools will say, I own example.com. And it says, okay, prove it. Put this random hash on a file. And it's used in, for different validations change, but it's, for the simplest one is the web, where it puts /well-known /whatever, and then that same hash. And by doing that in a timely fashion, it says, well, okay, the person that made this request actually owns that domain. And I reach back to it. The validation servers do that. And there's the server side stuff. Acme and Pebble's a kind of a cool thing to play with if you're looking to play with something, but it's made mostly for client testing. But it's the same thing as Acme, but it's made to basically just keep cranking ephemeral search instead of you having to set up all the CA stuff, which you would do if you were actually deploying Acme as a CA. There's some of the things I pointed out there as far as the wildcard certs. If you have if you have 10 or 12 different apps underneath the same domain, you don't have to worry about Jenkins.mydomain, GitHub.mydomain. You have to have a challenge loop for every one of them. You do it once, and then you can use that same cert on all the different boxes, or it happens to be through a single Nginx box. Then obviously you can peel it off there if you want, but you're only doing that process once per your whole domain. The validation cycle. And also too, for a while, you had to do network shenanigans. Like if you had two boxes, and again, if you're tinkering around at home, you only have one IP address, or at least most of us do, unfortunately. So you had to do some weird things where you point your port forwarding to another box, to go through the validation step just to get it there. And or you hand jam the one on the box that actually lands on. So like I said, it's less, there's less work with that. And the HTTP thing, which is more what drove me to this too, because I've been using the DNS validation steps for a while, because Cox and Comcast, which oddly enough is the only two ISPs I've had, both block port 80, and they stopped allowing port 80 as being blocked. So you actually need, even though it's only SSL, you still need port 80 and port 443 to answer up. And both those ISPs, at least last time I checked, block it both ways. So because of that, you can't use the standard yet. Now there is the other protocol, which I'll get to, that will allow you to do it. I'm pretty sure it blocks outbound port 80. I know it blocks inbound.
That's common. Spectrum and a bunch used to, well, they packet shape. So they used to do this with like VoIP providers to block people from wanting to sit boxes in their homes. So it's not surprising.
Yeah.
Typically, in terms of services, you're not supposed to run servers on your residential ISP. Yep,
that's true. I haven't looked at one in a while, but they're certainly not going to be responsible for it. That's more I read it as. But the thing is that I haven't done it recently, and probably I should have prepped for this meeting, so I apologize. But what I do is, you basically can, because you can make your firewall, for instance, respond to resets to every packet, and then you basically do a port scan from AWS box or something, and everything that shows up is not a reset, is something that's in between being blocked. And then you got to do the opposite thing the opposite way. Excuse me.
My question is, when it comes to Cox and Comcast, so Charter used to do this, which was Bright House. Anyway, if you could get them to set their modem, because these were cable providers, into bridge mode, so it functions just as a.
Yeah, these are all bridge mode. Mine are bridge mode too.
Is there?
Nope. Mine's my route IP address is on my pfSense firewall.
Okay, so they are packaged.
They're literally, I think it's a step deeper, that they just block, because the other one, there's some Windows ports, 445, the CFS ports 137.8.9. They block a lot of those because Joe Snuffy hooks his Windows. This used to be a problem. It's not a problem anymore, but like his Windows 95 box. Yes, I'm dating myself. And, all of a sudden his file system is free because he wants to share with his printer or something. So he turns on all that stuff and all of a sudden his, 137.8.9 are open to the world. So that's why a lot of times ISP did it more to protect its customers from just general nastiness. Port 80, I think might be more about what you're talking about, although they've never blocked 443, knock on wood. But anyhow, keep the so as far as the wildcard certs, you keep all the complexities on a single host because the wildcard cert validation is DNS based. So yeah, you install the noise and everything else. Did I skip a slide? No, I didn't. All the noise is on one box. That way, every web server you don't have to install CertBot or whatever tool that you're using to do your Let's Encrypt stuff. And again, you can install it on all the boxes behind your firewall, but unfortunately, if you only have one IP address, the web validation doesn't work. And also, yeah, the ISP problem. And as I said before, CertBot, and there's several tools. CertBot's obviously the one that's put out by Let's Encrypt, or Free Software Foundation, I think it is. But it's kind of a busy install, and also it's pretty. I don't know of a platform it doesn't run on, at least a popular platform, but it's all available. And the reason why we're using CertBot, or I use CertBot, first class support for API changes for new features. It's easy to set up because again, it's noisy, but you can install all the stuff on it. But it is 40 couple packages on a clean basic install. The challenge types, the HTTP 01 is the one that probably 9% of people use, but you need both 80 and 443, unfortunately. Which again, if you're at home, that's not going to work. DNS 01, you don't need any kind of network connectivity because all you're doing is it's giving you the same secret hash, and you're basically setting up a text record with that hash in it. And then the validation process is it reads the DNS server to verify you own the domain. So it has nothing to do with the connectivity. You can cut search for the same domain and actually land that same cert on stuff inside your lab and even AWS resources out on the web somewhere. Oddly enough, if you use AWS's, at least the last time I checked, AWS's default domain, you cannot run Let's Encrypt against it. You have to land a domain on it of some sort that is not AWS, because Let's Encrypt does not swallow it. The TLS SNI was the way you could do it with pure SS. It's not an SLP. It's not a second level. You're further down, right? I think it just completely stopped the for that particular domain at all, because technically any other domain, if you prove you own it, whether it's a root domain or www.domain.com or whatever, as long as you can do the cycle, it's fine. There are a few domains that seems to flag that said, nah, that's not happening.
Well, is that for domain names that you purchase through AWS?
No. I'm just talking about if you spin up an ES2, I could explain it better. If you explain it as a dumb ES2, by default, it has a domain attached to it. It's some hash dot. Right. Well, but it's the IP address, but the end of it is, that AWS.com, I think, or net. I'm not sure. But anyhow, if you try just to, be lazy and just to make a browser happy, you're not going to get there. Or at least last time I tried this. Because that's another reason why, that way, again, if I wanted to play with something and put it out on the web to where I wanted it to hit from several places, I would have to copy that domain file out there. Again, I wouldn't have to go through the process to validate the domain because it's already sitting on my network on that CertBot server, air quotes, that I use, that I can just copy that same for that particular domain. I maintain several wildcard domains just for that reason. I maintain the .dev domain that I'll copy around wherever. And again, I just keep it up for that purpose. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. The SNI 01 was the way we could used to do it with just pure 443. But there was some security issues with that, and it was deprecated on March 2019. So again, that's why that's what kind of negated the use of that, and basically everybody had to use DNS. And this ALPN 01, no wildcard support, but it is a way to do that with a single port, or at least my understanding. I'm not using that, to be very clear, but that was my understanding. It doesn't get used a lot though. And this is the well-known port, or sorry, address where when the challenge comes through, where they want you to put that data. So like when they said prove you own this domain, for example.com, then it goes and hits that exact domain, example.com, and looks for that token that they gave you. And again, because if it comes back with the same thing, then they know. And notice the HTTP no S on the front of it. It has to be port 80. DNS01, which is what I'm leveraging mostly. This challenge contain the big pro of that is you can use wildcard domains. As far as I know, it's just still the only way to use wildcard DNS. Domains for that for a cert. And if you have mobile web servers, again, you don't have to worry about where the packets land and everything else. You don't have to worry about shenanigans about slipping in and out of the file. Certbot does a pretty good job of, if you run it on the server, it actually moves your web space out of the way quick, sets up the validation, validates it, moves it back. So technically, it's not real hard. So again, assuming you have both ports landing on the web server. The cons would be if you're doing it that way, because if you're doing it in automated fashion, you have to have some sort of way to modify your DNS via script and things like that. So you have some API creds laying around. If you have it landing on, if you're doing it from the web server, then you have creds laying on your web servers, which, depending on your opinion on security, and there's 100 of them, that's probably a bad call for the most part. The other big problem is your DNS provider may not offer an API. Most of them do now, but there's a few that don't. And also sometimes there's some delay in propagation time, but I've learned that a lot of times if you like a lot of the scripts I have actually look for the upstream domain, the upstream DNS server, and usually that gets updated fairly quickly. So here's an example of, initially creating one and this manual auth hook part. So Certbot, for the most part, will work. You can just do all that except for that last manual auth, well, the last two lines. It defaults to HTTP. But if you do DNS, this manual auth hook is basically the shell script itself will generate that hash. Sorry, the Certbot will reach out, get the secret from the servers, and then we'll open up that script, this auth hook script, and this is completely your baby to deal with. But you get the domain back and also the validation. So with that, you can use that to turn around and push that data to your DNS servers. Here's an example. This is more pseudocode than anything. The top part's fairly accurate, but the bottom, the update DNS is a lot more noise. I do have one for GoDaddy, but basically it pulls this out, and that hash above is more or less separating, because sometimes I'm creating one for the base domain of example.com, and also app.dot and dev.dot or whatever underneath that for subdomains. So this is peeling off those because it has to put it in the right spot in the DNS, so that way it gets the right text record. And then after it's done, this is an example of what it looks like on the Certbot side of things. If you run a Certbot certificates, it'll tell you where, how many days you have left on a particular certificate. By default, if you keep running Certbot over and over again, it won't actually do anything until it's within 30 days of expiring. So it's pretty good about, if you did automate it, you could just have your thing run every day if you wanted, and it would just say, oh, you've got, this thing is 5 days old. I'm just not going to do anything. We'll just keep looping. That's how it keeps that data. And then also example is the top one's actually a real cert The second one is actually a test cert ran against the test server, which Let's Encrypt does offer like a regular production server and then a test server. So if you want to test your scripts and stuff when you design them, you can. There's a limit, of course, but it's a lot more generous, which I'll get to in a minute, than the actual production servers. You can when you're first developing things, you can accidentally overwrite the thing. I think you get like 5 or 6 cracks at the same domain, rewriting it completely, and it'll put you in timeout. It won't lock you out, but it's the whole trying to protect real things from testing. So this is to make you prefer you do that. CertBot kind of has a database, and by database, not databases probably most of us are thinking of, but more of just flat files with where things are at. The cool thing about it is once you build the cert once, it remembers everything, how it got there and everything else. There's that CertBot hook there. So the next time when you do it, you simply log on the box and you type in CertBot renew, and it reads this stuff and knows the right thing to do. So the cool thing is that if you have multiple, you have some that are HTTPS for some reason and have some for domain, it'll keep them separate for you. Or also too, more importantly, in this case, I have domains at GoDaddy, I have some at AWS, I have some nearly free speech, and they're all different hook scripts, of course. So this thing will remember that. Back to the API limits, they had again the prods things, like you get failed validations 5 per hour. Whereas, you get 60 per hour, basically 1 a minute on staging. So like I said, if you're testing a script or something, it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to swap out. And you'll get the same thing back. It will not be a valid cert as far as your browser is concerned, but it will crank out. It is a viable cert, but it shows up appropriately in there. The staging API you can switch out a couple different ways. But either can specify at least for CertBot, you can set your environment variable, Acme URL, and it'll override whatever happens to be in there. Sorry. Because I mean, if you look at those limits, they're pretty, they're pretty high. I think because I don't know, I don't have a good answer for that. But like I said, at the end of the day, you'd have to. Duplicate surrogates, 30,000 a week. Okay, if you break that somehow, I'm not sure what you're up to. Probably the only one you might bump into is 60 per hour, which is one of, and that's per. By the way, I didn't specify this correctly. It's per domain. So if you were renewing 5 domains and they all fail, that's not necessarily breaking. It's because if you're validating example.com, app.example.com, and Jenkins.app.example.com, that's 1 failure for each one of those, not 3 failures. If that makes sense. Like all this stuff is per domain. Just like you only can recreate a duplicate certificate, right? By the definition of a duplicate certificate is the same things in it. Now, like you can create a single certificate with several domains in it if you want to. And if you renew that and you generate a new one each time and not a renewal, you do it 5 times, even though it's for 5 domains, yes, you would increase, or yes, you would hit that limit. But it's more like if you change what's in there, you add a domain or remove a domain, technically it's a different certificate, so it doesn't trigger that limit. So like I could have probably specified it a little better. There's a decent amount of documentation on it that's probably 2 pages, but a lot of it's wrapped around how many times you do it to a single one. So basically, for you to trip this, you'd have to be testing a single domain and fail faster than 1 a minute. Which, if you turn around that fast, I don't even know that you can get your answer back from DNS or a web server. Well, you get a web server back that fast, I guess, but you would probably not exceed that without, I'm not sure why, looping through entirely too, fast. And also too, maybe you accidentally did something and you didn't realize it, and all of a sudden you're doing, you have a logic bug in your code, and you accidentally validate the same domain 100 times instead of 100 different domains. So it'll tell you about it quickly. But yeah, swap out the staging API. Like I said, you specify an environment variable, which will override CertBot what it sees, or you can specify it on the command line. And also too, CertBot also has a double dash test cert, which then means you don't have to care about what the actual test cert is because it's burned into the software also. Also, another good use for that, if you're playing around with Pebble or one of the local Acme server side things, that's the place where also you exercise that. So yeah, we have got all these certs created, and this is a example of what I'm doing with the, it's leveraging Ansible to deliver to deliver the certificates to different hosts. And I basically have, 3 problems to solve. The load balancers, which generally speaking, it's multiple certs, same spot, Nginx. So like, we all know it looks like a directory and there's 4 or 5 files in there. And then the app hosts. The app hosts are kind of sticky because I mean this literally. Everyone seems to want to put it in a special location. And then HA proxy I use solely for, a lot of times there's the app itself is on some over 1024 port, 333 or whatever, and the browser defaults to 80 and 443. So I usually land an HTTP HA proxy out there on the same box, so it catches anything and just kicks it up to the actual app. Why it has to have a cert is because with which PG where you have to be there. What's it called when you connect? When you connect something SSL once, then you have to come back as SSL. But anyhow, the browser does not go to a URL unsecured without fighting with it. So this will catch that, and it'll be a valid certificate still to kick you up to the actual app. Now here's an example of an inventory YAML file for a load balancer, which again, not super exciting. Load balancer 1, load balancer 2, and you just read out the domains you're landing there. And slightly more interesting, hopefully this scales well. Yeah. The app hosts themselves. I have an example of Nessus. That's a Splunk server, and Amelia is just a random SSH. That's I think Apache on that box. Just a couple different examples of, the bottom one actually probably looks pretty familiar because that's where most of your operating systems will store it. But the other two, again, Nessus wants it in one corner. Splunk wants it in a different corner. So, and the playbook itself will, wait a minute. Playbook itself will not scale. Damn. There we go. Yeah, there we go. That can work. Damn it. Well, it wasn't working. I just tried it. Yeah, arrow down doesn't help. Oh, yeah, no, squirrel is bad. So, yeah, so, oh, sorry, I'm at the top here. So it's Ansible basically reason technically the inventory file was broken 2 slides, but it's actually one inventory file. But it pulls in that stuff for the app certs, and again, it puts it in the actual playbook itself is fairly generic, as it will, put it in a location and it learns the location from the YAML file. So it's nice because again, no matter how many different services I have, I can use the same playbook. Yes, I have to play with the YAML a little bit, depending on how weird they get with it. This one here, the HA proxy needs the thing combined. So that's why all that noise is in there. But again, you do it once. As with most of our things around here, we try to do things, do the hard stuff once, and we don't have to think about it. And then it restarts the service after it loads, which it doesn't 100% work. Like Splunk doesn't start all the time. I haven't really researched why. And
So every time you run cert bot and like a cron thing, so like every 30 days.
yeah, so actually for me right now, I could automate it or completely automate it, I should say, because all I do is I run it, make sure everything comes back, and then I run the Ansible job. I do that every 2 months or somewhere around, for just before things expire. And then I'll run this job, which sprays the stuff amongst everything. Now it solves everything. It handles the load balancer cleanly. Splunk, 50-50 chance. Most of the other I have a Jenkins server and stuff like that too, and it handles all that stuff fine. So for the most part, all that stuff is handled cleanly. The only other thing you mentioned, something made me think of something. Yeah, this is the load balancer side. Again, that one's actually fairly easy. That was the first one I had, obviously, and then I started caring deeply about the HA proxy one was kind of the more complicated and nut in that cog, because I hate when the browser lands there and just freezes because of can't think of the phrase now, but no, like where a browser, once a browser connects to HTTPS, it has to connect to HTTPS.
No, not the cert pinning, not cert.
No, not cert pinning. Where it has to. Thank you. HSTS. Yes. Because of HSTS, as soon as the browser is poisoned by connecting to HTTPS Jenkins home.example.com, it won't connect to it again, even though, and so the HA proxy that happens to be on 80 won't work. So the 443 one has to work, which means I have to put the cert in both places, or I have to fight with the browser, which isn't a huge deal. It's just one of those things like it's not quite, like most of us do tinkering and just keep making it better. Sorry. You can, you just have to specify the port.
Right, but I guess from a standards point of view.
No, definitely shouldn't. No.
Okay, so that's why I'm a little trying to do TLS over port 80.
Wait, I'm not. So how did I confuse you?
Well, in multiple segments of the slide deck, it references port 80 for TLS.
Oh man, that's wrong, because port 80. Huh? No, because like I do have one reference here at port 80 where that there.
Well, no, if you go back to keep going. Keep going. Two more.
That?
Okay, so like when your app is on 80, like HA proxy shouldn't care that.
So
That should be.
so yes and no. So that statement is there more for, again, picture a box and Jenkins server running on port 3000. Okay. And if I just hit it with a browser, right, the browser is going to guess if I jenkins.mydomain.com and I hit enter, it's going to go, and most browsers now are defaulting 443, but it may do 80. And unfortunately, because HSTS, it will not connect to 80. So the reason why that HA proxy is down there, it listens on both 443 and 80. If you hit on 80, it's a dump forwarder up to HTTPS 3000 in this case. If it hits on 443, it just simply port forwards from port 443 to port 3000 again.
Okay. Usually if I'm running into a problem like that, that's a configuration of the server software.
No, that's the point. So like you're hitting the box cold, like you have a VM and you have your browser. You put in jenkins.example.com by default, and you're lazy, you didn't put :3000 to be clear. You're going to hit that box on 80. I have that HA proxy there just strictly to take any traffic on the standard ports and forward them to the appropriate ports.
So you're redirect traffic.
Yes. To 443. Because there's no listener there. So like if you install Jenkins on a box, it does not have a listener on 80. So I need something on 80 to bring it up there. Or anything. Anything besides a straight up web server. Straight up web server, yeah, you put listeners on both ports. Got it. Like you have Nessus. Nessus is another pain in the problem. So like when you move that to port 443, it no longer has a listener on 80. So you need something there to catch packets and put it up. Now a lot of people will just use Apache, which is another problem with that. HA proxy is just a little flatter because it's literally just a daemon and a config file, and the thing is the same across all my boxes. So again, it's just something that way 6 months from now, when I'm hitting a particular app I was playing with, I don't have to remember, was it 333? Was it 444? Was it whatever? The HA proxy catches the thing on 80 and 443 and puts me the right thing for that app host. Now, if it's coming through the Nginx proxy, it's not used at all. So maybe that's part of the confusion also. Yeah. Yeah, HA proxy is just sitting locally on the box to catch requests and forward them to the same box on the same host. That way, if I'm sitting inside, I'm using something that's not through the load balancer, I can go direct. No, just I use Nginx. I mean, I could use HA proxy everywhere. I used to use HA proxy. Oddly enough, nice thing about HA proxy, which is not really relevant to the cert subject, but you can actually HA proxy can actually forward also non-HTTP traffic also, which is kind of handy for that. So you can do actually straight up TCP traffic if you want to, TCP mode. So you can do some. I did some stuff with VPN servers like that to truly load balance. Again, HA proxy is not really a load balancer here. He is just a dumb forwarder that's a little lighter than installing Apache or whatever other web server that you prefer. Like I said, it's just it's only local to the box if I'm going direct. If I'm going through the load balancer already knows the right thing to do. So I land on port 43 and it will proxy through to port 333 on the Jenkins server. But not everything I have on the load balancer, for instance. I have a couple apps that I expose publicly, and some of them that I just don't because I don't really have need to use them externally. Yeah, this is cheat sheet. I just have some of the commands and stuff that I use, and there's some examples of some of the like when you actually do a renew, it's literally just a cert bot renew because it learns again because that database of how it originally created the cert. You really just have to do a renew. You don't care at that point where it is. And to your automation question, this could very easily just run daily because until it gets within 30 days, it doesn't actually renew the cert. And then, the Jenkins job could also, not Jenkins job, the Ansible job could also run and just check and make sure and see if the certificate's different. If it's different, do the right thing kind of thing. But I'm not doing that, to be clear. I just run it every couple months. It's 4 times a year, and I haven't automated that last imp out. And also, too, my Amazon stuff, I actually don't keep my keys there. So, like when I'm running it, I log into the box, export keys in my environment, and then run the renew process, which it also renews the other platforms. And those keys and API keys are all burnt into it. My AWS stuff, because I happen to be leveraging AWS CLI, that's doing that. So I haven't automated that out. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, so like another example you guys talked about, Jenkins is it like property of Jenkins and all this stuff?
A lot of apps when you move them, they only listen on one port. I mean, you might be able to configure them to do that too. Don't get me wrong. But like I said, in general, my thing is like I'm the punchline of this is usually when I'm playing with something new or I learn about a new tool, or a lot of times lately it's been like some Docker container or something like that, right? I can just spin it up and it's on some random port, don't care which one. And then I put it on the load balancer. Now that doesn't need that HA proxy at all. And it may or may not be HBS between the load balancer and it. Now, like Jenkins, for instance, or other stuff, that stuff I use like locally, I don't really expose. Not because security purposes, just kind of a pain. But sometimes those I don't really have to think, okay, Splunk is on this port and Jenkins is on this port or whatever. I just type in the box's name, and it hits a forwarder local on the box and takes me to the right spot.
Like a proxy.
It's just a dumb it is strictly just a dumb forwarder. It is the lightest web server way I know, at least, to just take in a packet and redirect it to the right spot. That also supports SSL because of HSTS, once I connected to Jenkins as SSL, all of a sudden it won't connect there anymore. So then my browser hangs because it doesn't, there's no listener on 443. If HA proxy is there, no listener on 8443. So it just sits there. So That's the problem I'm solving, which wasn't a big one, but creating that file is actually a bit painful because you had to concatenate some stuff because the way HA proxy uses its certs is a little different. You can basically concatenate them together and give it one file. So that's what that Jenkins code did. Anything else? Oh, sorry.
You're a mess with, use HA proxy just because that's what you're familiar with it. If you're mess with like Nginx Proxy Manager, you can actually pull a Cloudflare certs.
Yep.
Wildcard for 10 years, install them locally, and you can SSL your entire internal home lab based off Nginx.
I forgot the, yeah. What? But they renew them. They're still shorter. They're shorter.
You have to have reach out would be your reverse proxy box.
Right.
Your internal box is
So actually, I forgot to mention that. So yes, that's very cool. And that came out after I already solved that problem or already reinvented that wheel. But the downside of that is I also use those certs elsewhere.
Okay.
So like that cert bot, host. That cert bot host has the wildcard certs themselves. So if I'm building a Docker container or something like that, I just need to suck them in. I don't have to do anything else other than point them there. So that was, now to be fair, had that existed when I first started on this thing, I'd probably be right there next to you. So exactly. Yep. Yep. So like I said, I already reinvented that wheel. So this is where I'm at. And like I said, the certs also are handy for, again, copying around because they're just sitting on the disk at that point. I have a single box that has, I call it Vault, but it has like HashiCorp's Vault on it. So it has some secrets on that. And it also has CertBot on it. So it's a directory full of all those certs. So like I said, it's kind of the source for all that stuff. And also I don't have to install all that junk everywhere else. Now, to be fair, I could manage that, like you said, right at the Nginx level. And that does exist now. It didn't when I did it though. Yep. Caddy's popular. Yep. Caddy's popular too. Again, the Nginx, the CertBot thing is because it's its own thing. So it kind of supports it, any changes faster, we'll say.
You do, but you don't have to proxy your traffic. So if you're going to do external hosting, you can choose to proxy your traffic. They give you the option at the DNS level to proxy or not proxy. And then you can do 10-year edge, they call them edge certificates, which would be like your local land, and then you can do wildcard search.
And also there's an Nginx module that isn't directly related to Cloudflare that does the CertBot steps for you also.
Yeah, no,
I think it does that ALPN mode. That's how you get around. Again, I haven't personally used it. A friend of mine told me about it because I reinvented the wheel, obviously. Yeah. But that also got him around that particular problem. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's more. The Nginx boxes. Yes, I have to admit, when I built this, I was up to here in Nginx, and also I'm up to here in HA proxy. So the devil kind of thing, right? We're all guilty of it.
When you wrote your, did you ever look into the strength? I think it used to work. I think it's acting certificates.
That's that for Nginx. Oh, for no, never used it. Does it do DNS?
I think it's
Right. Yeah. So like I said, a lot of things I found were, again, leveraging and that's the normal use case, don't get me wrong, like where, you have a box, you want it to go, and that's where Caddy is, whoever mentioned Caddy is, that's a much lighter thing because you don't have to install that junk. It's still a single thing sitting on your web server. And so it's a little less busy. In my case, I have a lab sitting behind a single IP address at my home. So, no, there's no grandiose, thoughts that this is an enterprise network by any stretch of the means. But by doing the DNS level thing, I can do all that stuff and still have it sitting inside. I'll look at it. As long as it does DNS validation, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it does.
So to make this enterprisey, fully automated, you would also have to like put monitoring in, make sure whatever services are ingesting these renewed certs are coming back up safe.
Yeah, and actually I do have, what's his name? Prometheus running against all the URLs and everything else. Actually, I also, it more serves as a, hey, you know, it's less than 10 days before that cert expires. You should go do something about that. So yeah, I do have that. I do have monitoring on. Not attached to this stuff at all. It's just more of a, I have Prometheus watching all the boxes. So if I powered on all the stuff because I make some change, I should make sure everything comes up instead. I figure out, oh, I left that box down. Oops. And like it's not represented here, but I have Keep Alive D running on the 2 Nginx servers, which is kind of overkill because I only have one connection to the internet, so it doesn't matter. But if one of the boxes is down, and so I have 4 VM servers and 2 of them are sitting on, you know, the Nginx servers are sitting on one. So if I take one down for maintenance, they're still working. And again, I'm the only user, so it doesn't really matter. But oop, that means we're done. Tired of hearing me talk.
I think you mentioned as well 2 other projects, Pebble and Boulder. Is
Yeah.
that really for like if you wanted to do
So
like a CertBot, which is an internal CA?
correct. So Pebble is the Acme implementation though without all the CA stuff. You can't really do anything, you know, official with it. But it's good for developing something like if you're developing a caddy or a CertBot or whatever, or the next rate client, that gives you something to push against. Boulder is actually a full CA and everything else. You can actually create a CA in there if you go and pull, you know, get a whatever you call a delegated CA from whoever. The intermediate, sorry. Yes, intermediate CA from somebody. You could put it in Boulder at your company, we'll say, and crank out certs. That's what those 2 projects are for. I played with Pebble, not played with Boulder. Anything else? Okay, thank you. What's that? Oh yeah, thank you.
All right, again, yeah, there we go. Again, keep in mind, these are the upcoming presentations, and if you would like to present, I would more than be happy to put you on a schedule. Doesn't have to be polished or anything like that. And in December, we're going to do the Install Fest, so keep that in mind. Any other questions? Everyone has their ticket to get validated, right? All right. Other than that, thanks everyone for coming.